Hi, good evening, everyone. So today we are going to go ahead and do the revision of complete macroeconomics. And this PDF has already been uploaded on your portal. So you can also take a note of this PDF from the portal. It's going to be a quick session. So in a lot of places, I'm going to go ahead and tell you that you need to do those things yourself. I will just mark the important points. So make sure that you read out those points and you revise them before we sit for the final exam. Okay. Now, the first important thing which can be asked in macroeconomics paper, it is going to be classical versus Keynes approach. So we need to understand all the assumptions of the classical model. सबसे पहला, the first assumption that we have is that the economy always works under full employment situation, right? Full employment का क्या मतलब है? Anyone who is looking out for a job is able to get the job, right? So my entire labor force can be of two parts, employed and unemployed, right? But according to Keynes, anyone who is looking out for a job, जो भी job ढूंढ रहा है, that person is able to find the job and we have a full employment level in the economy. The second thing that we want to focus on, that is called as Say's law of market. So Say said that supply creates its own demand. जब भी हम कुछ भी market में supply करेंगे, उसकी demand automatically खत्म हो जाएगी. Its demand will be fulfilled automatically. The next thing that we have, that is known as laissez-faire system. Laissez-faire means that we don't need government role at all. हमें government की जरूरत नहीं है. The market forces of demand and supply are enough to rule the market, right? And we do not need to go ahead and we do not need the role of the government. Then the next thing that we talk about, that is called as neutrality of money, right? And when we talk about yes, beta, you're right. So full employment means that you include structural and frictional unemployment. Exactly. So I can say that my unemployment has cyclical part, structural part, and frictional part. Whenever I talk about full employment level, इसका मतलब ही ये है कि structural and frictional unemployment can be there. So you're right in that. Exactly. ठीक है. So next thing is money is neutral. ये बहुत important assumption है. Neutrality of money states that money is only a medium of exchange. That whenever money will be changing, it can only change nominal factors. That real factors will remain unchanged, right? The level of the output in the economy, the level of employment in the economy, the level of resources in the economy, इन पे कोई फर्क नहीं पड़ेगा money से, right? Real GDP of the economy, these will not be changed. Only nominal factors will be changed. Then we have perfect competition, closed economy, no money illusion. तो money illusion क्या बोलता है ना? Just take an example. So if I tell you that income of people is 100 and at that time price is 10, right? And now I am telling you that there has been an increase in the income of people to 200. So people will be very happy that their income has increased without realizing that at that point of time the prices have also increased. So money illusion bolta hai that people just look at the nominal income without realizing what their purchasing power is, which is given by the real income. They do not understand that they should be considering the real income and they only consider the nominal income. Isko hum money illusion bolte hain. When we say no money illusion, it means that the money illusion does not exist. It means that people easily understand that when the income increased, the price level have also increased and their real wages unchanged, right? Then we have existence of two sectors in this economy. एक हो गया real sector and other is monetary sector. They said that the rate of interest it is a function of two things. कैसे determine होगा rate of interest in the economy? The rate of interest would be determined using the level of savings and investment in the economy. Right बेटा? तो ये हमारा rate of interest का equilibrium condition आ गया. They also said, if I just have to show this diagrammatically, that if this is my savings and investment, wherever this is my savings and investment, then wherever savings and investment meet, that will be the equilibrium interest rate in the economy. Now, the next thing that they focused on, that is the labor demand and supply. ये बहुत important factor है बेटा, बहुत ज़्यादा important. This is an important point to distinguish classical versus Keynes. बहुत important point है. तो क्योंकि क्लासिकल्स बोल रहे थे कि मनी इल्यूजन एग्जिस्ट नहीं करता है, they said that we know that only real factors can affect the demand and supply, right? So according to the classicals, the demand and supply of labor is determined only through the real wage. उन्होंने बोला नॉमिनल वेज का कोई काम नहीं है यहाँ पे, अगर रियल वेज चेंज होगी तब डिमांड या सप्लाई लेबर की चेंज होगी. As long as the real wage is the same, the demand and supply will also remain the same. So if you notice here, I have written that the supply of labor is a function of real wage and the demand of labor is a function of real wage and MRP. What is MRP बेटा? किस चीज को हम MRP बोलते हैं? MRP is marginal revenue into marginal product. So in a way, this is telling me the value of output created by labor, right? So whatever labor is being demanded, demand, who is creating the demand of labor? The firms. So whatever labor is being demanded by the firm, it will depend on the real wage rate that exists, and it will depend on the value of the output created by the labor. Right, beta? Okay. And also remember that classical concept is a long run analysis. ये एक short run analysis नहीं है. This only focuses on the long run. Okay. Now there is something which is known as classical dichotomy, right? बेटा ये इसी चीज पे based है that there are two separate sectors, real and monetary, and whenever we talk about money, money can only affect nominal variables and it cannot affect the real variables. Money can only affect the nominal variables and not affect the real variables. So देखो ध्यान से जरा, try to read about it. In classical dichotomy, we mean the existence of two independent sectors, real and monetary. There is complete independence. ये statement बहुत important है. It can come as an assertion statement in exam. हाँ, तो the independence exists between real and nominal variable. दोनों एकदम अलग अलग हैं, right? It acts as medium of exchange. Money impacts prices and only affects nominal variables, keeping the real variables unchanged. बहुत बहुत important statement है, and you have to make a note of it. I am pretty sure such statements can come in exam. So assertion में they will say that classical dichotomy suggests independence of nominal and real variables. Reason में वो बोल देंगे the classical suggested no money illusion. Something like this, right? They will give you an assertion statement and a reasoning statement, और ध्यान से देखना पड़ेगा आपको that this should be the reason for this. तो ये एक बारी हमें ये statements को बहुत ध्यान से read out करना है. Okay, now let's talk about the determination of output and employment. So according to the classicals, ये रहा बेटा हमारा production function. Output is a function of the labor employed, and ये जो equilibrium labor होगा, this will come through the labor market, right? So we will have equilibrium being decided through the demand and supply of labor. Wherever labor demand and labor supply will meet, you will have your equilibrium wage rate and equilibrium labor in the economy. And once this equilibrium labor is determined, so through the production function, output will be determined in the economy. ये आपका production, right? So once this is determined, you can take this to the production function and determine the output in your economy. Okay, now let's talk about the goods market according to the classicals. So according to classicals, whenever we have to find the equilibrium rate of interest in the economy, this equilibrium rate of interest will be determined through savings and investment. अब देखो ध्यान से, savings is an increasing function of the interest rate. जैसे जैसे interest rate ज्यादा मिलेगा, तो जितना amount save कर रहे होगे वो increase करेगा, right? The investment is a decreasing function of the interest rate. As interest rate will increase, the loans will become expensive. If you will have expensive loans, the investment will decrease. Also, keep in mind that whenever we talk about interest rate, right, this interest rate is always the real interest rate. जब भी हम सेविंग्स या इन्वेस्टमेंट की बात करते हैं, मतलब हम या गुड्स मार्केट की बात करते हैं या इन्वेस्टमेंट की बात करते हैं, we always go ahead and we talk about the real interest rate. But whenever we talk about the money market, जब भी हम money market की बात करते हैं, then we always talk about the nominal interest rate, right? So always remember that when we are talking about savings and investment, the interest rate that we are talking about, this is the real interest rate. उसका equilibrium हम economy में निकाल रहे हैं. Okay. Now this is just again something that can be asked in exam. तो जैसे उन्होंने एक statement दे दी that if savings are more than investment, the interest rate will. So when savings are more than investment, beta, we are here. देखो ध्यान से, I am here. Here saving is this much, इतना amount save हो रहा है, और investment is only this much. Saving is more, investment is less. So when saving is more than investment, तो क्या देखते हैं हम? What do we find out? We find out that with time, the interest rate will decrease. Interest rate को नीचे आना पड़ेगा. Equilibrium interest rate will decrease. So whenever savings is more than investment, the equilibrium interest rate decreases. Okay. Now, when we talk about classicals, the money market, ये तो goods market हो गया बच्चे. The goods market equilibrium, according to classicals, comes where savings and investment are equal to each other. Similarly, according to classicals, the money market equilibrium is determined through the quantity theory of money. So, एक बारी just try to have a look at it. See, the quantity theory of money suggests that MV is equal to PY, right? We know classical suggested that output is at full employment level. So output को हम fix कर रहे हैं at some level, right? So we can say that MV is equal to P into Y bar. Now what we can do here is that we can fix Y at Y bar. हमने Y को Y bar पे fix कर दिया है, right? And I am taking Y here and P here. रिवर्स भी कर सकते हैं. I could have very well gone ahead and done something like this, that take P here and Y here and fix Y at Y bar. Right? Now, in order to determine this price level, I want to go ahead and I want to equate MV to PY. जहां पे भी ये दोनों meet करेंगे, that is where my equilibrium level of price would be. So what we need to go ahead and do, we need to make a graph for MV. तो let's say M into V को हमने fix कर दिया at 100, right? So we know that if I take M at 10, V will be 10. If I take M at 1, V will be 100. If I take M at 100, V will be 1. So kind of a rectangular hyperbola जो हम बना रहे हैं, right? So you can try to see that this can be the diagram for MV. And actually you can have MV by P here, right? Because I'm taking just Y on the other side. And wherever the two meet, that will be your equilibrium price level in the economy. So this is how, according to classicals, the money market works. According to classical money market के लिए हम quantity theory of money को use करेंगे. And according to quantity theory of money, we know that MV is equal to PY. So MV by P should be equal to Y. According to classicals, Y is fixed at some level. तो मतलब MV by P को भी हमें किसी level पे fix करना पड़ेगा, right? When we plot this, we get some rectangular hyperbola, and wherever the two intersect each other, we get the equilibrium price level in the economy. This is what they suggested. Now this curve can keep shifting depending on what happens to the supply of money. So if I will increase the supply of money, then MV by P will increase. So this curve will shift upward. And when this will shift upward, price will also shift upward. A typical example of classical dichotomy. कि आपने money supply को बढ़ाया और उसकी वजह से price भी बढ़ गया, पर output remained unchanged. Right? So this is how they determined this is how they went ahead and determined the equilibrium condition. Okay. Now let's go ahead and talk about the criticisms given by Keynes on this classical model. The first criticism given was underemployment equilibrium. So Keynes ne kaha, this is not justified what you are saying, that we will always be at full employment level. It is very well possible that we will be below full employment level of output, and therefore Y can be less than YF. Then the second thing is refutation of the Say's law. तो उन्होंने क्या बोला था Say ने, that supply creates its own demand. तो Keynes ने बोला that if this would have been the case, अगर ऐसा होता कि supply would have created its own demand, तो फिर उस केस में तो there would have been never a recession or depression. But we saw the Great Depression in the economy. So this is also incorrect. Right? Then they said laissez-faire. That means self-adjustment of the economy. That means only the role of market forces, right? फिर Keynes ने बोला that no, self-adjustment is not possible, and we have the role of government that must be considered. Then Keynes said that, you are saying that savings and investment should be equal to each other, but what about how saving is getting affected through the level of the income? हमें income changes को भी consider करना पड़ेगा. So we need to consider the income changes also. Then he said money is not neutral because we may have money corresponding to it, wage and price rigidity. What if wages are rigid? What if when money increases, price doesn't increase immediately or wage doesn't increase immediately? We need to consider sticky wages. We need to consider sticky prices, right? So he said, no, money is not neutral as has been told by classicals. Then state intervention. So he focused on the role of the government intervention. Rejection of quantity theory of money. He said that, we can't just simply say that MV is equal to PY. We need to define money in a better way. स्पेशली व्हेन इट कम्स टू द ट्रांजैक्शन, व्हेन इट कम्स टू द डिमांड ऑफ मनी, हमें डिफाइन करना पड़ेगा वेदर इट इज ट्रांजैक्शन डिमांड, स्पेक्युलेटिव डिमांड, किस चीज की बात कर रहे हैं. सो ही वांटेड टू गो अहेड एंड टॉक अबाउट more about money rather than just talking about the quantity theory of money. And at last, he talked about the long run analysis being unrealistic. तो उन्होंने बोला कि we should be talking more about the short run rather than going ahead and talking about the long run. Long run is very unrealistic कि long run में full employment आ जाएगा या ये हो जाएगा या वो हो जाएगा. Let us first go ahead and let us talk about the short run equilibriums in the economy. So then this is the Keynes theory, beta. Keynes said that full employment is not possible. He said workers will suffer from money illusion. लोगों को ऐसा लगेगा कि हाँ हाँ बहुत पैसा आ रहा है. They will not consider that price is also increasing, right? And they will keep suffering from money illusion. Then this is very, very important. According to Keynes, the supply of labor is a function of nominal wages. Keynes को ये लगा कि वर्कर्स तो मनी इल्यूजन में, वर्कर्स प्राइस को कंसिडर ही नहीं कर रहे. दे आर ओनली कंसिडरिंग व्हाट इज हैपनिंग टू देयर नॉमिनल वेज. वो सिर्फ ये देखना चाह रहे हैं कि क्या मेरी वेज बढ़ रही है नहीं बढ़ रही. दे आर नॉट कंसिडरिंग दैट वेदर द प्राइस इज ऑल्सो इंक्रीजिंग और नॉट. So according to Keynes, the supply of worker, it is only determined through nominal wages. But the demand, उन्हें ये पता है firms को कि हमें कितना demand करना है. Firms are not having any kind of money illusion. तो Keynes के according जो demand है, demand of worker, that is a function of the real wage rate. According to him, the firms are well informed. उनके पास बेहतर इंफॉर्मेशन है. दे आर वेरी श्योर दैट दे विल डिमांड बेस्ड ऑन रियल वेज. बट द वर्कर्स, दे विल फेस मनी इल्यूजन एंड द सप्लाई ऑफ वर्कर, इट इज गोइंग टू बी अ फंक्शन ओनली ऑफ द नॉमिनल वेज. देन अकॉर्डिंग टू हिम, मनी एक्टेड एज अ स्टोर ऑफ वैल्यू ऑल्सो. तो हमें ये कंसिडर करना पड़ेगा दैट पीपल कैन समटाइम्स गो अहेड एंड स्टोर मनी एंड कैन यूज दैट फॉर लेटर पर्पस. एंड he focused on the short term analysis. तो उन्होंने बोला कि long term का focus नहीं रहेगा. We will be rather focusing on what happens in the short run. Okay. So, Keynes, therefore, he talked about money wage rigidity model. He said that बहुत जल्दी wages नहीं act करती हैं and बहुत जल्दी prices भी change नहीं होते हैं. And there are a lot of reasons behind it. जैसे we have something called as menu cost, right? So once I have printed the price of something, I am going to change it very soon, right? So we may face from money wage rigidities and we should be considering those. And therefore, this is important, beta. Just read through it. He also focused on the minimum wage laws and efficiency wages. तो उन्होंने बोला कि देखो, even though it may happen that the demand and supply of labor gives you a certain wage rate, but the economy has government role in it. And government में से कि इतना minimum wage तो रखना ही पड़ेगा. So you may have some minimum wage law in picture, right? And at that wage, you may see that only this much amount of labor is demanded. So even though people are willing to supply this much, demand तो कम की हो रही है. And when there is a difference between demand and supply, it will go ahead and lead to unemployment in the economy. Right? Similarly, he said we need to consider efficiency wages also. Right? And no, beta, wages are rigid. Okay. No, he didn't talk directly about prices. He talked about wage rigidity in his model. Okay. So then the other thing that we want to focus on is what was I saying? So we want to also focus on the fact of efficiency wages. And when we talk about efficiency wages, iska kya matlab hai? That even though my equilibrium wage may be 100, I may still pay 120. I may still pay 140 to ensure that workers are efficient, to ensure that they keep working properly, that they're loyal to the firm, that they don't leave the firm. तो इन चीजों की वजह से वेजेस रिजिड रहेंगी, और अगर वेजेस रिजिड रहेंगी तो हम वेजेस को इक्विलिब्रियम के हिसाब से मैनिपुलेट नहीं कर सकते, राइट? And therefore there may be some unemployment that may exist in the economy. Okay, so just read about this part. Now we want to talk about effective demand principle. What is effective demand? So according to Keynes, he said that effective demand is that demand wherever your aggregate demand is equal to aggregate supply. जहां पे भी aggregate demand और aggregate supply equal हो जाएंगे, wherever the two will be equal to each other, that will be effective demand. But he went one step ahead and he defined something even more important. So he defined something known as ADP and ASP. Let me focus a bit on that first. So ADP, this is called as aggregate demand price. Aggregate demand price क्या चीज है अब? So according to Keynes, we want to not only focus on the demand, but we want to focus on the proceeds received from that demand, right? तो कितना पैसा आएगा जब हम वो डिमांड को फुलफिल करेंगे, that is called as aggregate demand price, right? So this is what he said. It refers to expected revenue from sale of output produced at particular level of employment. जब हम आउटपुट को बेचेंगे तो कितना पैसा, how much am I expecting, कितना revenue आ सकता है, that became the aggregate demand price curve. Similarly, he defined something known as aggregate supply price curve. And according to him, aggregate supply price curve is the proceeds necessary from sale of output, right? And wherever the two met, जहां पे भी ASP and ADP equal हुए, that is the amount of employment in the economy. तो देखो जरा, this is the curve बेटा. जब हमारी employment 5 million है, तो aggregate demand pricing curve बोलता है 100 billion, and at that same level aggregate supply pricing बोलता है 90 billion. Then I increase the employment. If I will employ more people, then I will be producing more output. When I will produce more output, I will be getting more revenue out of it. तो मेरा expected revenue बढ़ेगा. So my expected revenue is increasing. Now when I will have more people employed, तो मेरे जो cost लगेगी उन लोगों पे वो भी बढ़ेगी. So my ASP will also increase. So as my employment is increasing, both ADP and ASP will increase. Both of these curves will be upward sloping. Both of them will increase in the economy. तो अगर आप यहाँ पे ध्यान से देखोगे, these are the two curves I have drawn. One is called as the ADP curve. One is known as the ASP curve. And according to Keynes, wherever the ADP curve and ASP curve were equal to each other, जहां पे भी इनका intersection हो रहा था, that would be the level of employment in the economy. ध्यान से याद करो, the classicals said that the level of employment in the economy will be where demand of labor will be equal to supply of labor. According to them, both demand and supply were a function of the real wages. And this is a function of MRP also. Wherever these two were meeting, that was the equilibrium amount of labor in my economy. According to Keynes, wherever the ADP curve and ASP curve intersected, that is the amount of labor in the economy. That is the amount of workers in the economy. And this amount of worker in the economy will help me determine what is going to be the effective demand in my economy. तो जितने ही लेबर होंगे उतना ही आउटपुट प्रोड्यूस होगा, and that will create the effective demand. बेटा ASP कर्व को आप ऐसे समझ सकते हो, it is like the cost I incur on the labor, right? So the total cost of production incurred to employ the labor, that can be called as the ASP curve, right? And this is the proceeds from selling the output. Wherever the two meet, that will be your equilibrium amount of labor in the economy. So this is what he said. Coming back to effective demand. So according to him, effective demand kahan par aa gayi? Wherever the demand and supply, or more importantly, the ADP curve and ASP curve meet, that is where we determine the effective demand in the economy. So this is a small diagram beta. देखो effective demand की अगर हम बात करें, so I can distribute it in two parts, consumption demand and investment demand. Consumption demand depend करेगी income पे, marginal propensity to consume पे, investment depend करेगा rate of interest पे, and marginal efficiency of capital पे. So this is again Keynesian theory, right? Now what I want you to do is I want you to read this, please, and make sure that you understand these points based on effective demand. ये इसके कुछ important pointers है which can be asked in exam, and I want you to go through them today itself, right? I'll move on to the next topic now. Okay. Now let's talk about the consumption theories. So when we talk about consumption theories, in consumption theory, the first important thing to understand is psychological law of consumption. This is basically given by Keynes. And he said that consumption is a function of current income level. Right? So he said consumption is equal to C bar plus small cy, where this is marginal propensity to consume and this is autonomous consumption. Right? And there are two things that we need to understand here. One is called as inflationary gap and other is known as deflationary gap. Inflationary gap exists whenever your output is more than full employment level of output. तो अगर मेरा output full employment से ज्यादा है, then yes, you're right, beta. Even absolute income hypothesis talks about the same thing. Correct. You're right. Okay. So if my output is more than full employment level of output, then beta I can say that it will be inflationary gap, right? Ab beta next thing aati hai deflationary gap. So deflationary gap exists whenever output is less than full employment level of the output. There are two kind of expectations that we have to study. यहाँ पे बहुत important pointers हैं बेटा. There are some names that you have to remember. So adaptive expectation and rational expectation. Now in Keynesian, APC is greater than MPC. Correct. Yes. Let me just show you why. So beta Keynes said that C is equal to C bar plus CY. Right? And if I talk about APC, it will be C by Y. So it will be C bar plus CY by Y. So this will be C bar by Y plus small c. So this will be C bar by Y and small c is nothing but MPC. So this will be plus MPC. So when I add something to MPC, I will go ahead and I will get APC. So APC will be more than MPC. So you're correct. Yes, that's correct. Okay. So there are two kind of expectations then. Beta pehli ho jati hai adaptive expectation and the other is rational expectation. When we talk about adaptive expectation, it means people will continue making some kind of error. Every time when I will form my expectation, it will be based on what happened the last year. तो पिछले साल अगर गवर्नमेंट ने इन्फ्लेशन बढ़ाई, I will just consider that. I will not consider all the relevant information of this year, right? So adaptive expectation is also called as regressive expectation. It says that people will always make future expectation based on the continuation of the past. पिछले को देखेंगे, नहीं बनाएंगे, पिछले को देखेंगे, नहीं बनाएंगे, right? This was given by Kagan and Narlov in 1956-57, right? And this says that there is a backward working approach. Please try to highlight this point. Backward working approach. It means आप हमेशा पिछले साल को देखते जाओगे. Whereas rational expectation, this was given by initially John Moot, and that was given in 1961. And it is a forward-looking approach. You will consider all possible information. जितनी भी information market में है, मतलब अगर गवर्नमेंट ने आज कुछ पब्लिश किया है मॉनेटरी पॉलिसी से रिलेटेड, मैं वो भी कंसिडर करूंगी. सो एनी इंफॉर्मेशन प्रेजेंट इन द मार्केट विल बी कंसिडर्ड बिफोर आई फॉर्म माई एक्सपेक्टेशन. मेरी जितनी भी इंफॉर्मेशन मार्केट में होगी, मैं उन सब को कंसिडर करूंगी ही करूंगी. बट आई विल गो अहेड and I will make an error only if there is an information not known to me. जैसे demonetization, मेरे को नहीं पता था कि वो कल demonetization होगी, तो I will not take that into consideration. So I will go ahead and I will make an error only if there is something which is unknown in the forecasting. Okay. Then we talk about new classical versus new Keynes. Beta, I have gone ahead. ये तो मैं I am just explaining this much. But below this, I have gone ahead and made all possible pointers to distinguish between new classicals and new Keynesian economists. Everyone will read them. Very important from exam point of view. तो एक बार ऊपर से देख लेते हैं. The new classical theory talked about policy ineffectiveness. उन्होंने क्या बोला कि कोई भी पॉलिसी इफेक्टिव नहीं रह सकती है. नो पॉलिसी विल बी इफेक्टिव. व्हाई? बिकॉज पीपल आर रैशनल and they have already considered all possible things into consideration. For example, if government announces that there will be increase in the money supply, so we know that this is the IS curve, LM curve. LM will shift rightward and the level of output will increase and interest rate will decrease. So ideally, we know that whenever the government would announce increase in money supply, there should be increase in the level of the output in the economy. But whenever this happens, if the people are very rational and they know ki acha, money supply is increasing now, it means that prices will also increase, right? And if price will increase, it means that nominal interest rate will increase. But we know real interest rate will remain the same. So we should not be changing the level of investment. So if people are very rational, right? If people know that this will lead to this, this will lead to this, then this policy will become ineffective in nature, right? Because accordingly, people will ask for higher wages also. When people will ask for higher wage, then it would mean that, you know, there will be increased cost of production of the firm and so on and so forth. So it will have its repercussion effects in such a way कि output बढ़ ही नहीं पाएगा, right? So this is policy ineffectiveness proposition, which says that policy cannot be effective because people are rational and they will already consider everything into consideration. This is what new classical majorly suggested. Whereas new Keynesian, they majorly suggested that wait, even though these people are rational तो हैं लोग, but still you will see that policy will be effective. Why? Because there will be problems like coordination failures, right? Firms will not be able to coordinate with each other, right? There will be problems like market not being able to clear there will be problems like price war. There will be problems like sticky prices, right? So they said that even though you may think that market will clear and when supply of money is increased, log ekdam se wage bhi zyada मांग लेंगे, ये सब होगा, but wait, due to sticky prices, due to coordination failures, you may not be able to achieve ineffectiveness, and in the short run, the policy may actually turn out to be effective. So you just have to remember that the new classicals talked about policy ineffectiveness. उन्होंने बोला पॉलिसी इनइफेक्टिव रहती है, कुछ भी गवर्नमेंट लाएगी लोगों को पता होगा तो वो पहले ही अकॉर्डिंगली एक्ट कर लेंगे और कुछ नहीं हो पाएगा मार्केट पे. But new Keynesians, they suggest that policy can still be effective because of these reasons, right? So what I want you to do now is you must go ahead and read these paragraphs. I'm leaving this to you. You will read this. This is till here. This is all the difference between new classical versus new Keynesian, right? Majorly based on this fact that I have just told you. Okay. Now let's talk about the different kind of consumption functions that we were doing. So the first one that we have is called as absolute income hypothesis. Beta, absolute income hypothesis bolta hai that consumption is a function of your current income. C is equal to C bar plus small cy. These are some of the features of absolute income hypothesis. It is a short run theory. MPC is assumed to be constant. APC is greater than MPC. And MPC plus MPS is 1. Similarly, APC plus APS is 1. And MPC is between 0 to 1. Kuch properties hain which you have to be well aware of. The next theory is called as relative income hypothesis given by Duesenberry. So relative income hypothesis bolta hai that look, my consumption will depend on not only my income, but it will depend on the relative incomes that I have, right? So if my neighbor, right, he has gone ahead and, maybe changed his door and he has a wooden door and, now he has a different kind of, ring and he has a different banner outside his home. तो मैं भी ये सब follow करूंगी. I will also try to see his behavior and I will also try to replicate his behavior. If my friend is going for movie every week, I will also try to, copy him and I will also try to go for a movie every week. So the relative income hypothesis suggests that your consumption not only depends on your absolute income, but on the relative income. And yahi par we have the concept of demonstration effect. So the demonstration effect suggests that people are very much affected by how their neighbors and their friends demonstrate. तो वो जैसे जैसे कुछ चीज खरीदेंगे वैसे वैसे आप भी उस चीज की कंजम्पशन करोगे, right? Can anyone tell me what is this linked to in microeconomics? हम इसको माइक्रो में किस चीज से लिंक कर सकते हैं? The demonstration effect. Okay. Bandwagon effect. Anyone else? You're correct. So in microeconomics, this can be linked to the bandwagon effect. It says exactly the same thing, that I will go ahead and increase the demand of the commodity if my other people are also demanding that commodity. अगर बाकी लोग consume कर रहे हैं तो मैं भी consume करूंगी. Right, beta? Then there is another thing called as ratchet effect, which is also given by Duesenberry. And it says that if, ये बहुत अच्छा effect है बेटा, ये समझ लो ध्यान से, very important. अगर तो मेरी income बढ़ेगी, then I will increase the consumption. But when my income will decrease, then I am already accustomed to a particular lifestyle. अगर मुझे आदत हो गई है that, every month I pay to Netflix. Every month I will go to 5 cafes. Every month I will watch movie. So if my income will increase, I will watch 5 movies. I will watch more movies. But if my income will decrease, I may not decrease the movies I watch क्योंकि मेरी आदत बन चुकी है. I have been accustomed. I now want to go ahead and I want to watch movie, right? So when your income increases, you will increase the consumption. But when your income decreases, you may not go ahead and decrease the consumption. This is called as ratchet effect given by Ducey. Then we have the permanent income hypothesis. Permanent income hypothesis is given by Friedman. And he wrote a book called A Theory of Consumption Function. And according to him, income can be of 2 types, permanent and transitory. परमानेंट इनकम वो इनकम है जो फिक्स्ड है, आपके पास रहेगी ही रहेगी. ट्रांजिटरी इनकम इज द इनकम विच में बी वन टाइम काइंड ऑफ इनकम, जैसे बोनस, राइट, जैसे प्रॉफिट इन द स्टॉक मार्केट, राइट, लॉस इन द स्टॉक मार्केट, एक्स्ट्रा टैक्स डिडक्टेड 1 month, राइट. So these are all transitory incomes. Now, according to him, your consumption is always a function of the permanent income and is not affected by transitory incomes. Then we have life cycle hypothesis. Life cycle hypothesis is given by Ando Modigliani, right? And according to him, जब भी कोई भी इंसान income earn करता है, he will go ahead and he will do the following. So let me give you an example. Suppose this person is aged 20 and he thinks that he will live till 80, right? And he will attain his retirement at 60. So what this person will go ahead and do now, he will first calculate the total number of years he is going to live for. So from here, we know that he is going to live for 60 years. Then he calculates the number of years he is going to earn for. And from here, we are clear that this person will be earning for 40 years. Suppose, for example, let's say every year he earns 1,000 rupees. So he will calculate his total income. His total income will become 40,000. And after calculating his total income, he will distribute it evenly for the number of years he is living. So he will distribute it for these 60 years, right? And this will become his per year consumption, right? So suppose if you solve this, let's say you get, let me take 1200 here. It will be easier for calculation. So let's say he is living for 40 years, every year earning 1200. So he is earning 48,000 in total. And he's going to live for 60 years. So this is going to be 800. Right. Now, think that every year he will consume 800. Every year he will earn 1200. So his yearly savings will be 1200 minus 800. That means it will be 4. So for these years, from 20 to 60, every year he saves 400. That means his total saving will be 400 into 40, 16,000. And he will use this 16,000 for consumption in the remaining 20 years. Right? This is how you can be asked a numerical on life cycle hypothesis. Itna hi पूछेंगे इसमें, right? Okay, these are some of the assumptions. Please try to do them. Now let us talk about the investment function. So investment, sometimes when it is written as induced investment, it means investment can be a function of the income level, right? Beta, it ultimately depends on wealth and income only, na? So मेरा consumption, it depends on what is the income I earn every year. And wealth क्यों आ जाता है? Because in some examples, it may happen that every year you are earning 1200, but along with this, suppose it tells you that from your grandfather, you have received 1 lakh, right? So ultimately, you need to go ahead and you need to consider the total money that you have, and to smoothen out that consumption, jo bhi total money aayega, you will divide that with 60, right? So ultimately, how much wealth and how much income you have, that is determining your per year consumption. Okay. Okay, let's go ahead. So now we talk about the investment function. When we talk about investment function, we can say that induced investment hoga, so it will be a function of income. As the income will increase, the investment should also increase. But if it is going to be autonomous investment, it means that it is not affected by income, and I will be equal to I bar, right? Now, these are some of the determinants of the level of the investment. So there is something which is known as marginal efficiency of capital, MEC, marginal efficiency of capital. But MEC is the rate of return that you get whenever you go ahead and you invest your money in capital, right? Now, the equilibrium requires, there is a separate lecture on the portal in case you want to read through. But the equilibrium requires that MEC should be equal to R. I will keep investing till MEC, which is the return on the capital, is equal to R, which is the cost of capital. जब तक ये दोनों बराबर के ना हो जाए, I will continue my investment. If my MEC is more than R, continue investing, increase investment. If your MEC is equal to R, equilibrium condition. If your MEC is less than R, that is where you will go ahead and reduce the investment in the economy. Okay. So, beta, autonomous investment is just going ahead and saying that investment is fixed. ये किसी भी चीज का function नहीं है. So whether income is 100 or 200 or 500, investment is fixed, right? Then it is autonomous investment. Okay. Now let us go ahead and talk about the accelerator theory and multiplier theory. So try to see that the, अच्छा एक और चीज है इसमें, हाँ? See, when we talk about multiplier, many students are confused कि अगर एग्जाम में सिर्फ मल्टीप्लायर निकालना आए, ideally no, हाँ, बेटा MEC is in terms of value, right? But MPK is in terms of the numbers of output generated. So we may not say that both are exactly same. They are similar concepts, but MEC is in terms of monetary concept, right? So see here, rate of return, it is in terms of money, right? And MPK just tells me the additional output produced when an additional unit of capital is employed. Okay, so many students are confused what happens whenever you are asked about multiplier. If nothing is given in exam और आपको बोल दे कि find multiplier, then by default you need to find out the government multiplier. मतलब वो simple, change in y due to change in g equal to 1 upon 1 minus MPC. ये basic multiplier पूछ रहे हैं, यही निकालना है, right? Otherwise, they will go ahead and mention it to you. Ki find investment multiplier, find tax multiplier. If nothing is mentioned, by default, we will go ahead and we will find the usual government multiplier, right? Yes, you're right, beta. It is in terms of the real factor, not real, nominal. It is in terms of money. I am comparing it with R, right? Agar real karoge, then it has to be both in real terms. So if you keep MEC in the real terms, then your interest rate should also be in the real terms. right? And if you keep MEC in the nominal terms, then your interest rate will also be in the nominal terms. Yes. 1/1 minus MPC, marginal propensity to consume, correct? Okay. Now, coming back to what we were saying. तो अब हमें बात करनी है बेटा, we want to talk about multiplier versus accelerator. समझने की कोशिश करो. When we talk about multiplier, multiplier asks us how income will change as investment will change. But then we have the coming up of Clark. And Clark ने बोला that there is a simultaneous effect, right? And simultaneous effect says that there may be the case that when you increase your income, जो हमने यहाँ देखा, when you increase your income, then your investment will increase, right? More, देखो, you can see it in the economies. जिन economy का GDP ज्यादा होता है, वहां पे investment भी ज्यादा होती है. So we realize that the reverse is also possible, that when the income increases, then investment also increases. So if we try to calculate this, that how income will change when investment will change, that is called as the multiplier, investment multiplier. But if we try to find out how investment will change when income will change, then that becomes the accelerator, right? This is what is mentioned here. Change in investment leads to change in income. Matlab how income will change when investment will change, multiplier. Change in income leads to change in investment. Matlab how investment will change when income will change, accelerator, right? The first concept of multiplier was given by R.E. Khan in it's not Khan, it is Khan in 1931, and it was called as employment multiplier also. I hope this is clear to all of you. ठीक है? तो ये रहा बेटा आपका investment multiplier का formula. This is something which was given by later Keynes also, and Keynes said that so try to see here that we may have a concept of leakage from the economy. And this leakage, it may be due to savings. It may be due to taxes charged. It may be due to imports. These are the three reasons for leakages in the economy. Whenever there is a leakage from the economy, money goes out of the economy, then at that point of time, we realize that there is less consumption. And if there is less consumption, then we know that any multiplier is given by 1/1 minus MPC. So if there is less consumption in the economy, it is going to reduce the level of the multiplier also, right? So Keynes said that the leakages can reduce the multiplier in the economy. जैसे जैसे leakage होगी, economy का multiplier decrease हो जाएगा, right? Now, the next thing that we want to talk about, that is called as foreign trade multiplier, right? Foreign trade multiplier, this is basically what happens to your output whenever there is change in the foreign trade of the economy. अब यहाँ पे एक बात समझनी पड़ेगी. See, we assume that exports are constant, right? Usually, exports will depend on the exchange rate in the economy, and they will depend on the amount of foreign income. जब foreigners की income ज्यादा होगी तो वो export ज्यादा मांगेंगे हमसे, कम होगी तो कम मांगेंगे. Because we are not sure about the foreign income, we don't consider this factor and assume exports to be constant. But when we talk about imports, then imports are a function of exchange rate and they are a function of the domestic income. जैसे जैसे हमारी income बढ़ेगी, then people will increase the demand for foreign goods also, and imports will increase. So we can say that imports is M bar plus My. As income increases, the imports in the economy will increase. Now, in such a case, if I go ahead and write Y is equal to C plus I plus G plus X minus M, I can write Y as C bar plus Cy plus I plus G plus X minus M bar plus My. So if I just go ahead and I take all factors together of Y, I will go ahead and get this. And if I take it on the other side, I am going to go ahead and get this part. Right? Now, if I were to go ahead and find the government policy multiplier in this case, so I will put a D here and I will put a D here. Right? And everywhere else also I will put a D. And these will become zero. Ye zero ho jayega. There is no change in autonomous consumption, no change in investment, no change in export, no change in autonomous imports. So if I go ahead and I find dy by dg, this will be 1 upon 1 minus c plus m. And I know that 1 minus c, 1 minus marginal propensity to consume, this is nothing but marginal propensity to save. And this is nothing but marginal propensity to import. So we will get dy by dg as this factor. Right, beta? So this is what you can go ahead and find out. Okay, this is done. Now, the next concept that we have, that is basically the concept of super multiplier. So when we talk about super multiplier basically goes ahead and it combines the two things together, the concept of multiplier and accelerator together, right? So if we combine multiplier and accelerator together, अगर हम इन दोनों चीजों को एक साथ कर दें, then what we get is called as the super multiplier, right? And this is what we have mentioned here. But a government purchase multiplier, I have clearly mentioned here. This is how Y changes as G changes. 1 upon 1 minus MPC. This can also be written as 1 upon MPS. Then we have the tax multiplier. The tax multiplier is change in Y due to change in taxes. And this is minus C upon 1 minus C. And you can also write this as minus MPC upon MPS. Okay. Then we have something called as balanced budget multiplier. Balanced budget multiplier basically goes ahead and it says that the change in government expenses should be equal to change in taxes. At that point, how output changes when G changes, that is called as balanced budget multiplier. Usually, the balanced budget multiplier is equal to 1. But not always. Hamesha 1 nahi hoga. It is usually 1, right? Can you give me 1 point when it is not 1? Any one reason why it may not be 1? Anyone? Any reason why balanced budget multiplier may not be 1? Anyone else? Okay, current account deficit. That may not be the answer. Anyone else? Crowding out effect. Lump sum tax. But I'm not asking why your expenses, government expenses will be more than revenue. Okay, so try to see this. We are saying y is equal to c plus I plus g plus nx. So y will be c bar plus c yd plus I plus g plus nx. So y will be c bar plus c y minus t plus I plus g plus nx. Y will be c bar plus cy minus ct plus I plus g plus nx. I am introducing change everywhere. So dy is equal to dc bar plus c. Actually, let me just put y, first of all, y on one side. So y minus cy is equal to c bar plus I plus g minus ct plus nx. Now I am saying that we need to introduce change everywhere. So change introduce karna is very simple. Just put d everywhere. So I will just put d everywhere. D, 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 and D. Right? Now if you notice, we know that the autonomous consumption is not changing. So ye hat jayega. Autonomous investment is not changing. This will go. Autonomous गवर्नमेंट एक्सपेंडिचर है, गवर्नमेंट एक्सपेंडिचर चेंज हो रहा है और टैक्सेस भी चेंज हो रहे हैं एंड एक्सपोर्ट्स आर नॉट चेंजिंग. दिस विल आल्सो ट्राई टू सी दैट डीजी बार इज इक्वल टू डीटी. हमें बोला गया कि जितना गवर्नमेंट एक्सपेंस है उतना ही टैक्स है, दोनों बराबर के हैं. सो आई विल पुट देम इक्वल. सो आई विल गेट डीजी बार माइनस सी डीजी बार and here I will get 1 minus c dy. तो अभी के लिए तो I will get dy by dg is equal to 1 minus c upon 1 minus c. That means 1. ये usual case है where balanced budget multiplier should be 1. Now beta, what I can do is take an example here, case 1 में. Suppose I don't take net export to be constant and net export is a function of income. मतलब कि ऐसा कुछ हो गया that ये सब same है, this is all the same, but net export is export minus import and import is a function of income. Try to understand this thing. I have done this in multiple live lectures also. So import is a function of income. So if you just now look here, then I will get this. I need to take all y things on one side. तो ये वाला चीज भी यहाँ पे जाएगा. तो it will be 1 minus c plus m y is equal to c bar plus I bar plus g minus ct plus x minus m bar. जितना भी autonomous चीजें. Again I will introduce d everywhere. तो ये d हो गया, d हो गया, d हो गया, d, d, d and d. Now try to see that again. The only thing that is changing is government expense. If government के खर्चे change हो रहे हैं और tax change हो रहा है by the equal amount. Other things are not changing. तो ये हट गया. These are not changing. So you will just remove them. Right? And also we know that government expense and tax are changing by same amount. तो यहाँ पे हमने कर दिया 1 minus c plus m dy is equal to dg minus c dg. So I will get 1 minus c dg is equal to 1 minus c plus m dy. So my dy by dg, it will become 1 minus c upon 1 minus c plus m. Now they cannot cancel out each other. This will not be 1. So this is very simple that when you're, this is just one of the example. बहुत cases में हो सकता है, but one of the example is when your import is a function of income. Right? Then in that case, your government balanced budget multiplier is not 1. Balanced budget क्यों है? क्योंकि हमने DG और DT को equal लिया है. That is why it is balanced. But I am not getting the answer here as 1. If small m would have been 0, मतलब अगर यहाँ पर ऐसा होता कि ये 0 होता, मतलब मेरे जो imports हैं, it would not have been a function of income. तो ये 0, ये वाला part 0 हो जाता. Then I would have just got 1 minus c upon 1 minus c, and I would have got the answer as 1. Right? Secondly, one of you just went ahead and Shivika, you just mentioned progressive tax. You're right. Even in that case, it is true. So, agar supposedly, let's assume that here somewhere, मेरा जो tax वाला part है, that would have been t is equal to t bar plus ty. So here somewhere I would have seen that t coming up, t popping up. So even in that case, it would have happened that they would have not cancelled out each other, right? So you need to try to see where the balanced budget multiplier may not be 1, but just remember that it is not always 1. हमेशा 1 नहीं होगा, right? So this is about the balanced budget multiplier. ये देखो यहाँ पे लिखा हुआ है, balanced budget multiplier is 1 only in case of lump sum taxes. सिर्फ तब 1 होता है, but otherwise it is not 1. Yes, you're right, beta. Even that we discussed in one of the lectures. So if investment is also a function of income, जैसे if we have induced investment, I bar plus, suppose let's say BY, it is also an increasing function of income. Again, balanced budget multiplier will not be 1. Okay. So then the next thing that we have is called as foreign repercussions or backwash effect. Now the foreign repercussion or backwash effect basically goes ahead and says that the countries are linked to each other, right? And because the countries are linked to each other, that is why, so take an example here. Just say I tell you that there is country A, right? Is it related? I have another concept. Before I forget, I will just write that down. Beggar thy neighborhood. Let me explain this first, then I will explain that. So suppose there is country A and this is country B. So imagine that due to some reason, we don't know, but due to some reason, the income of country A increased. Now, when income of country A increases, it means that the demand in country A will increase. So country A के लोग ज़्यादा demand करेंगे goods. When they will demand more goods, they will increase the demand of domestic goods also. And they will increase the demand of foreign goods also. So when they will increase the demand of foreign goods, it means that there will be increased imports of country A. And if they're buying it from country B, तो country B के exports बढ़ जाएंगे. Country B will be able to sell more to country A. Now, when country B's exports will increase, it means that they will be able to earn more income. So B का income भी बढ़ जाएगा. And when country B's income will increase, तो यहाँ पे demand बढ़नी शुरू हो जाएगी. And when here the demand will increase, तो ये लोग भी ज़्यादा foreign goods demand करेंगे. So they will start demanding more from country A also. So they will increase their imports, but exports of country A will increase. So country A's income will further increase. So this will keep going on, right? And this is known as a backwash effect or a feedback effect. ये positive sense में कि एक का income बढ़ा तो उसको दूसरे से फर्क पड़ा, दूसरे का बढ़ा तीसरे को, and so on. So when one income grows, when one country grows, income of one country increases, it goes ahead and increases the income of other countries also. It's a positive aspect. Just the reverse of it, अगर मैं इसको negative aspect में ले लूं, then we have the concept of beggar thy neighborhood, right? And beggar thy neighborhood or beggar thy neighborhood says the reverse. It says that, look, if country wants to, suppose country में unemployment बहुत ज़्यादा है. Let's say unemployment is very high in country A, right? Country wants to increase its employment. तो country A क्या करेगी ना? It will just depreciate its currency. And we know that when currency depreciates, it causes the exports to increase and imports to fall. So when exports will increase, that means it will be able to sell more to other country. And imports will fall, which means it will reduce the demand from other country. तो क्या होगा कि जो यहाँ के firms हैं, they will be facing this problem now कि everybody is purchasing from country A because goods are cheaper in country A, उसकी currency सस्ती है, it's depreciated, and nobody is buying from its firm because imports have fallen, right? So everybody, when they will demand from country A, here employment will increase. But nobody is buying from country B now, right? So here employment will start falling. So here country A is growing at the cost of country B. It is transferring its unemployment to the other country. This is called as beggar thy neighborhood. So in this case, it's a reverse, right? So no, beta, not that one. That is different. The one given by middle goes ahead and says that you have a center and then you have the outside and you have backwash effects and you have forward effects also. This is in respect to the international trade, right? That is in respect to development economics. The both of them are different concepts. Okay. So then therefore the beggar thy neighborhood concept is in the negative sense that if I have unemployment, I will depreciate my currency. I will go ahead and I will transfer my unemployment to your currency and I will start growing. That's the reverse. Okay. Now, beta, talking about national income. The national income we know can be calculated using the expenditure method, income method, and product method. And we also know that whenever we talk about national income, then GDP always talks about the final goods and service, but within the domestic frontiers, right? Whereas when we talk about the NDP, national income, then it is the income by the residents of the country within or outside the domestic frontiers. Right, beta? These are some of the formulas. I want all of you to go through these formulas and read them out. These are the three methods that have been explained. This is very basic. I'm leaving for you to understand this concept. Okay, now let's talk about the demand for money theories. So when we talk about the demand for money theories, the first theory is given by classicals. In classical, we have the typical, very common Fisher quantity theory. Fisher ने बोला कि MV is equal to PT. T is the number of transactions. When we multiply transaction with price, he said that this will give me the demand side, right? And V refers to the velocity, right? According to classicals, they were very clear that money can only affect the price in the economy and that real factors cannot be affected in the economy. Then we have the concept of Cambridge version, and this is initially given by Marshall and later modified by Pigou, Robertson and Keynes. Now this says that it is very difficult to understand the transaction. Transaction को समझना कि कितनी transaction हुई है बहुत मुश्किल है. So rather than focusing on transaction, we will focus on the output created in the economy. तो हम क्या कर देंगे? We will say MV is equal to PY. That's the first thing. And secondly, we will take V on the other side. So we will get M is equal to 1 by V into PY. That means we will get K times PY, right? And here this K tells me कि अगर nominal income इतनी है in the economy. So try to understand. Y is the real output of the economy. It is getting multiplied with price level. So this gives me nominal income in the economy. So the amount of money required is some proportion of nominal income. जितनी भी economy का nominal GDP होगा, उसका कुछ proportion, some proportion of nominal GDP will be required in hand. That will be the demand of money, right? And here small k is nothing but 1 by V. And they said that this is proportion of income held for the transaction purpose. Then other than this, you have the Robertson's equation of the demand of money. And according to Robertson, what he did is, he didn't change Y. तो ये जो MV is equal to PT था, he kept T as it is only, but he changed the meaning of T. According to him, this T means the total volume of the goods and service produced. कितने goods और service produce हो रहे हैं, उसका volume is T. This V goes on the other side. So it becomes M is equal to 1 by V into PT. So this becomes M is equal to small k into PT, right? And here, this K, this is basically the same proportion that we talked about other, the proportion of total amount of goods and services used, right? Baki sab formula is the same. So you need to remember, when we talk about Robertson, he kept T as it is, सिर्फ उन्होंने K लेकर आया. When we talk about Marshall and then modified by Pigou, there the transaction was replaced by the amount of output in the economy. It was replaced with Y. Then the next thing is another Pigou equation, जो हमने modify करके देखी, and that equation is that P is equal to K into R divided by M, right? And here he said that P is the value of money, right? And K, it is nothing but the, actually R is not required. You can simply say K is the proportion of resources which people hold in terms of legal tender, right? So I am directly saying K is the proportion of resources, and अगर हम K into R करते हैं, then R is the total resources जिसका कुछ proportion लोग money में hold कर रहे हैं. So you can write K into R also, or you can directly refer K as the amount of money people are holding as legal tender, and M is basically the number of actual units of the legal tender. So to give you an example, if I tell you that the total legal tender in the economy is 1000 and people are holding 400 amount of legal tender, then this gives me this ratio, right? And this is equal to the value of money in the economy. This is how Pigou stated his equation. According to Keynes, there were 3 reasons why people will hold money: the transaction motive, the precautionary motive, and the speculative motive. According to him, transaction motive was to do daily transactions, right? And transaction motive was a function of income in the economy. Speculative motive was basically to go ahead and to understand how I can make profit out of money. तो कहीं पे invest कर दो पैसा and earn return out of it. So speculative motive was a function of interest rate in the economy. And precautionary motive was for the future unseen events, right? And if I have more money, तो मैं precaution के लिए ज़्यादा पैसा रख पाऊंगी. If I have less money, I will be able to keep less as part of precaution. So the precautionary money was also a function of the income in the economy, right? Now, this is how he drew the speculative function. So he said that as interest rate in the economy will increase, you will hold less money in hand and you will invest major part of the money. So the demand of money will fall. And when interest rate will be low, then you will hold more money in hand and demand of money will be high. So there is an inverse or downward sloping speculative demand for money. He also talked about liquidity trap. So liquidity trap is that interest rate at which the demand of money becomes infinitely elastic. मतलब हम सिर्फ पैसा हाथ में ही रखना चाहेंगे. The interest rate is so low that you don't want to invest your money anywhere and you just want to hold your money in form of your cash, right? So when this becomes elastic like this flat portion, it reflects the liquidity trap. And this happens at a very, very low interest rate in the economy. Then beta, you have the Baumol-Tobin approach. So इसमें क्या है ना, You just need to remember, ये कुछ differences दिए हुए हैं यहाँ पे, just read out these differences. You need to remember that according to Baumol-Tobin, whenever we talk about the demand of money, in that demand of money, they also talked about the brokerage fees, right? And they talked about the interest rate in the economy also. So according to Keynes, अगर हम Keynes की बात करें, the speculative demand for money was a function of interest rate, but the transaction demand of money or the precautionary demand of money, it was only a function of income in the economy. उसको interest rate से फर्क नहीं पड़ रहा था. But according to Baumol-Tobin, even the transaction demand of money was a function of interest rate. तो ये बात बहुत ध्यान से रखनी है that according to Keynes, the transaction demand of money was not a function of the interest rate. The transaction demand only depended on the income. But according to Baumol and Tobin, the transaction demand itself was also a function of interest rate in the economy. So they gave this formula, just remember this formula, that the demand of money can be given by 2by r under root, where we can go ahead and see that B is the brokerage fees, Y is the income, and R is the interest rate in the economy. Right? So this is your demand for money according to Baumol. According to Tobin, he also mentioned that people want to diversify. उनके अकॉर्डिंग जो हमारा मनी था, इट वाज अ वेरी सेफ वे ऑफ doing the transaction. It was risk free, whereas bonds are risky but they give you return. So according to Tobin, people would go ahead and have diversified portfolio. मतलब वो थोड़ा पैसा मनी में रखेंगे, थोड़ा बॉन्ड में, थोड़ा शेयर में. So people would want to go ahead and diversify. But this is Friedman's restatement of the quantity theory of money. So according to Friedman, उन्होंने वापस यही लिखा that the demand of money is some function of nominal GDP. Demand of money proportionate to nominal GDP. But ये जो K है ना, this K was defined very differently. So according to him, this K was a function of RM, R, B, and R, E. That means how much money I will hold in cash. It depends on the return on income, return on rate of interest on the equities, and rate of interest on bonds. This is bond. Right? So कितना कितना रिटर्न मुझे तीन चीजों से मिलेगा, उसके डिपेंड करके मैं बताऊंगी कि कितना पैसा मुझे हाथ में रखना है. How much money I want to hold in. Two other things that you need to remember. The real balance effect was given by Patinkin and the wealth effect was given by Pigou. These are the definitions for the two of them. Real balance effect ये कहता है कि जितनी भी हम spending करेंगे, whatever money we spend, it should be based on real balances. ठीक है? कि real terms में मेरी purchasing power कितनी है, that will define my spending. So spending is a function of real balances. Wealth effect says that whenever you will become rich, because your wealth has increased, you will go ahead and spend more. So take an example. Suppose in 2010, your income was 1,000. In 2011 also your income is 1,000 only, but someone has given you their house, right? Your father has given one of their house to you to live in, right? This has increased your wealth. So even when your income remains the same, if your wealth increases, then your spending will increase, right? And this is called as wealth effect. So the wealth effect was given by Pigou and the real balance effect was given by Patinkin. Then we have the trade cycle. देखो ट्रेड साइकिल बताता है द पीरियड ऑफ बूम्स एंड रिसेशंस इन द इकोनॉमी. Whenever we want to see whether the economy is growing or it is over time having negative GDP growth, we pass a line through these trade cycles. If the line is upward sloping, it means that there is growth which is positive in the economy. If this line is downward sloping, it means that there is negative growth in the economy. So, for example, if I tell you that over time, these are my cycles, business cycles, and I can clearly see that they are going in a downward direction. So it means that with time, my GDP is falling. That means that there is negative growth in the economy. And here it means that there is positive growth in the economy. No, beta, both are different, na? The real balance approach is saying spending is a function of real balances. The wealth effect is saying that whenever your wealth will increase, your spending will increase. So both are different. Okay. Okay. Now, I have just added this at the last moment, although, there are very, very less chances of coming this in exam because this is not taught at your graduation level. Still, if you are going through the notes, I would suggest that you just read these conditions once. एक बारी के लिए इन conditions को सिर्फ पढ़ लेना. These conditions come under the Samuelson trade theory, and it says that you will have a cycle-less growth path if MPC is 0.5 and accelerator is 0. And ऐसे करके ना, he has given conditions for different cases. That you will have dampened fluctuations in your business cycle if MPC is 0.5 and accelerator is 1. And if your accelerator is 2, then you will have constant. If your accelerator is 3 and MPC is 0.5, then you will have explosive. So he has given these fixed numbers. And with fixed numbers, he has talked about these different patterns, right? That when you will see explosive cycles, when you will see constant amplitude cycles, when you will see dampened cycles. So just make a note of these 3-4 points, right? Another thing which is important here is called as Hicks theory of trade cycle. He talked about this in his contribution to theory of trade cycle. ये एक book लिखी उन्होंने, उस book में उन्होंने अपनी trade cycle के बारे में बात की. And he said that, look, there is a ceiling and floor to the output movement. मतलब output ऊपर या नीचे तो जाएगा, but output के upper level और lower level पे एक ceiling और floor होगा. इसके ऊपर भी नहीं जाएगा, इसके नीचे भी नहीं जाएगा, right? And he also said that basically this cycle will be generated due to two reasons. One is the multiplier effect and one is the accelerator effect, right? So multiplier effect and accelerator effects are the reason why business cycles will be generated in the economy. Then we have another business cycle theory given by Calder. And Calder said that business cycles occur due to the different amount of savings and investments in the economy, right? जैसे जैसे saving और investment economy की बदलेगी, that is how the business cycles in the economy will be affected. Next, we want to focus on the Phillips curve, beta. Phillips curve was given by A.W. Phillips. It was given in 1958. And he said that there is an inverse relationship between inflation and the level of the unemployment in the economy. These are inversely related to each other. ये कुछ assumptions हैं Phillips curve की, go through them. Then what happened is we have something which is known as the augmented Phillips curve. So when we talk about Phillips curve now, Phillips curve equation is this. But augmented Phillips curve said that there should be a role of expectations in the economy, right? कि जैसे जैसे हम लोगों की एक्सपेक्टेशन बदलते हैं वैसे वैसे भी इकोनॉमी का इन्फ्लेशन बदलता रहता है, right? So augmented Phillips curve was given this equation, right? So this says that even when there is no change in unemployment rate, unemployment बिल्कुल नहीं बदल रही है, gap fixed हो गया है 3% पे suppose. Then also inflation in the economy can increase if people change the expectation about inflation. जैसे जैसे inflation की expectation बदलेगी, वैसे वैसे economy में inflation बदलती जाएगी, even when your unemployment rate is fixed at natural rate of unemployment, right? Or the gap between unemployment rate and natural rate is fixed. Here, there is one more thing that can be asked in exam. So suppose they tell you like this. Consider that the natural rate of unemployment is 3% and people follow adaptive expectation and last year's inflation rate is 2%. And suppose they tell you that if the economy is at full employment level, find inflation in the economy. ऐसा करके they have given you a question, right? It depends on expected inflation. May or may not depend on change in inflation. Change in inflation only comes into picture if you have adaptive expectation. So, let me explain this also. So, try to see. See, I am saying that inflation depends on expected inflation. But if people have adaptive expectations, then expected inflation will be last year's inflation. If that happens, that expected inflation is last year's inflation, then in that case, I will get pi t is equal to pi t minus 1 minus alpha ut minus u. Then what you are saying is correct, that changes in inflation will be equal to minus alpha changes in the unemployment rate. So then we can say that change in inflation is minus alpha change in unemployment. But this only happens if I am assuming that pi t is equal to pi t minus 1. Otherwise, inflation depends on expected inflation. Now, read the question. It is saying that natural rate of unemployment is 3%. This is 3%. Let me start from here. It says natural rate of unemployment is 3%. So this is 3. It says people are following adaptive expectation approach. So this means that expected inflation is last year's inflation. And last year's inflation is given as 2. Suppose they tell you the sensitivity is 1. That means alpha is given to you as 1. And it says that economy is at full employment level. So Y is at YF. This means U is at UN. Economy is at full employment level. So unemployment rate is also 3. So what will be the inflation in the economy? So this will be 2 minus 1 into 0. That means 2. So the inflation currently in the economy will also be 2%. So such simple questions can be asked in exam where you may be asked to calculate pi t or ut and you just have to use this formula. Okay, I'm leaving for you to read this out. Beta ek baari ye bhi dekh lena. According to Tobin, the Phillips curve was kinked shape. It was like a normal Phillips curve for some level and vertical for some level. According to Solo, the Phillips curve also could go below. That means you could have negative inflation in the economy also. So this information you should remember. Okay. Now, this is another trade theory, and this trade theory was given by Hawtrey, and it was given in his book called The Monetary Theory of Trade Cycles in 1929. According to him, trade cycle was completely a monetary phenomenon, right? According to him, the real factors were not getting affected in the trade cycle, and it was only a reflection of the amount of money in the economy. कितना पैसा है economy में, वो trade cycles को through reflect हो रहा था. So if you would increase the amount of money in the economy, then nominal GDP will increase and you will be in boom. And when the money will decrease in the economy, nominal GDP will decrease and you will be in recession. So according to him, everything related to the trade cycle was a reflection of the flow of money in the economy. Okay. Another trade cycle theory is the Hayek cycle theory. And according to Hayek, he said he actually based his theory based on another person's theory called Wicksell theory, right? So Wicksell said that, look, we need to go ahead and we need to distinguish between two kinds of interest rates in the economy. One interest rate is called as natural rate of interest. This is where the demand of loans and supply of loan is equal to each other. Another is called as money rate of interest. This is the actual interest rate that exists in the economy. एक है equilibrium interest rate, जहां पे लोन का डिमांड और सप्लाई बराबर हो जाएगा, और एक है जो इकोनॉमी में एक्चुअल में एग्जिस्ट कर रहा है, राइट? एंड अकॉर्डिंग टू देम, ट्रेड साइकिल एग्जिस्ट्स ड्यू टू द डिफरेंस बिटवीन द टू. That natural rate of interest can be more than actual, natural can be less than actual. So according to them, this difference between natural interest rate and actual interest rate, it is the one that is causing trade cycles in the economy. Okay. Then let's talk about the different kind of inflation. Beta, please ये statements पढ़ लेना. When we do 1% change in unemployment brings 2% change in GDP. No. Beta, 1% change in the relation between unemployment and GDP is what you're talking about is Okun's law, right? You're not talking about Phillips curve here. Phillips curve is inflation and unemployment. And this is Okun's law. Two things are different. Acha. Okay. So these are some statements given here. Friedman says that inflation is always and everywhere a monetary phenomena. Very, very important statement from exam perspective. Very important. Very important statement. Very important statement. You need to remember who gave which statement. बहुत important. Creeping inflation is when inflation is less than 3%, walking 3 to 7%, running 10 to 20%, higher inflation 20 to 100%. There are kind of inflations. One is called as demand pull inflation, which exists when demand is more than supply. The other is cost push inflation, which comes because there is increasing cost that takes place. तो अगर labor की कॉस्ट बढ़ेगी, वेजेस बढ़ेंगी तो फर्म्स प्राइसेस बढ़ाएंगे, that will cause inflation in the economy. Then you have stagflation. Stagflation is stagnation plus inflation, and there is something called as inflationary tax. So inflationary tax is basically when the value of good decreases because of inflation in the economy, or when your purchasing power decreases because of inflation in the economy. That's called as inflation tag. But this more or less ends a lot in your macroeconomics. ये कुछ monetary policy के instruments दिए हुए हैं मैंने. Just try to read them out. This is a completely different unit, but just read it out. You should know what is repo rate, reverse repo rate, CRR, SLR, liquidity adjustment, and MSF. I think there is a 15 to 20 minute video on the portal which only talks about the different instruments used by RBI. These are very, very important from exam point of view, and each one of you will go ahead and read this out. Then we also have something which is known as qualitative measures of credit control. One is called as rationing credit. मतलब government अगर credit को fix कर दे that इससे ज़्यादा loan नहीं देना है, right? Or the government goes ahead and gives a preference that you can only give loan to this industry, then that is called as rationing of credit. You also have margin requirement. So sometimes there is a difference between the market value of security and the maximum loan value, right? That difference is called as the margin requirement. You can also go through what is the fiscal policy and monetary policy. This is pretty simple, and I have very recently covered this in interim budget also. You have to be very clear what is revenue deficit, what is primary deficit, what is fiscal deficit, and what is effective revenue deficit. These four definitions are very important from exam point of view, and all of you must go through them. I have covered them very recently in interim budget lecture. एक बारी वहां से भी देख लेना. Okay. Then you must be also very aware about the different. I think I've taken that later. So then we have the ISLM model. The ISLM model is given by Hicks and Hansen. IS tells you the equilibrium in the goods market, and LM tells you the equilibrium in the money market. The IS curve is a downward sloping curve in the IY space. And whenever you talk about IS curve, you can write it like this. Y is equal to C plus I plus G plus NX. इसको open कर दो. C bar plus CY plus I bar minus BI plus G plus NX. So 1 minus CY. Take all these bar factors together. This becomes A bar minus BI. So Y is equal to A bar minus BI by 1 minus C. This is your equilibrium output in the goods market. Right? Now, note that if I were to write this, I can write this as Y is equal to A bar upon 1 minus C minus B into 1 upon 1 minus C into I. And if you remember, ये वाला जो part था ना, this was our initial multiplier, जिसको हमने लिखा था alpha G, government policy multiplier, 1 minus this. So I can just replace this with alpha G, right? So I will go ahead and get Y is equal to A bar upon 1 minus C minus B into alpha G into I. And now I can just introduce D everywhere, right? This is going to be 0. None of this is changing. And from here, I will get DI by DY is equal to minus 1 upon B into alpha G. This is the slope of the IS curve. Right? So the slope of IS curve is inversely related to the investment sensitivity and to the multiplier. Right? जब भी इन दोनों में से कुछ भी बढ़ेगा, the slope will fall. When the slope falls, the curve becomes flatter. Right? So that is how the IS curve is determined. This is also written here. You may go through this. Similarly, we have the money market equilibrium. The money market equilibrium is represented through the LM curve. And the equation of the LM curve is M by P is equal to KY minus HI. Right? Same you can do here also. Just introduce D everywhere. Make this as 0. So 0 is equal to K dy minus H di. So H di is equal to K dy. And from here you will get di by dy is equal to K by H. And this is the slope of the LM curve. Right? K is the sensitivity with respect to income. H is the sensitivity with respect to interest rate. So when K increases or H decreases, this will increase. Whenever the slope will increase, curve will become steeper. This is mentioned there also. So ये वाला part जो है, everybody will recheck this. Please recheck this box and try to understand this carefully. 2 to 3 questions can be asked only based on this box. So each one of you will revise this box. Okay. Now when we talk about the IS LM together, so the IS which represents the goods market and LM which represents the money market, together it tells you the equilibrium in the through the AD curve. The AD curve is in the PY space, and this AD curve shows goods plus money market. Now we need to draw an AS curve also in the PY space, and this AS curve, it comes from the equilibrium in the labor market, right? This AS curve can differ based on whether you're talking about Keynes theory or classical theory. According to Keynes, he talked about very short run period. The AS curve should be horizontal. According to classical, which talked about the long run period, the AS curve should be vertical at full employment level. And actually, what we draw in books is the medium level AS curve, which is upward sloping, right? Which is an increasing function of the price. So if we need to combine these three things together, we can draw an AS curve which looks like this. This represents the short run given by Keynes. This represents the medium run. And this represents the long run given by the classicals. And this total throughout together, it represents the AS curve of the economy, right? Okay. Then we can talk about the different kind of monies. This is just read out, isko ek bari revise kar lena. This shows M1, M2, M3 and M4. And you also have something which is known as liquidity resources or liquidity aggregates. And these liquidity aggregates have these formulas. Just read through them. There is something which is known as high-powered money. High-powered money is the currencies plus the reserves, right? Currency plus reserve form the high-powered money. The high-powered money is also called as monetary base. It's also called as base money. It's called as money base. Isi high-powered money ko hi, when we introduce this in the economy, it multiplies itself to give us the money supply in the economy. So we can say that the money supply in the economy is money multiplier times the high-powered money in the economy. So jitna bhi base hoga, whenever that base will be multiplied with the multiplier, it will give me the total money supply in the economy. This is the formula for it. Please revise this out. Neutrality of money I have explained to you. Okay. Now this is a concept of Patinkin's real balance effect. Patinkin went ahead and said that whenever price increases in the economy, the real balance will decrease in the economy. And if the real balances will decrease, then the demand of money should also decrease in the economy. And the overall demand in the economy should also decrease. So Patinkin gave the real balance approach, which said that whenever prices will increase, the demand in the economy will decrease. Just remember this approach also. Okay, so this is it that I wanted to discuss. Just go ahead and revise these notes once. And I think this is what can be, asked in exam. And if you revise this, you will be able to do well in macroeconomics. Okay. It is already on the portal beta. It has already been uploaded. Okay. So now anything else, any doubt that anyone has, anyone would like to ask anything? If I missed the doubts earlier. Now, so beta AD depends on both IS and LM curve. It is derived out of the equilibrium of IS and LM curve. So we cannot say that, if AD is flat, IS would have been flat. We cannot say that. No. AS is derived out of the equilibrium of the goods and money market. So no single curve slope can determine the slope of the AD curve. DSC papers, no, please don't touch them. They are very tough and they are not from what we require to do. No. Okay. Let me make notes on international. I am not committing. I will go ahead and try to make the notes and send across and do a session on those. Huh? Beta, that was actually not on monetary policy multiplier. It was a tricky question, but not on monetary policy multiplier. So try to understand. तो क्या हुआ ना that let me explain you the concept here. So when we talk about this is my IS curve, this is my LM curve, right? And when we increase the supply of money, the LM curve will shift to the right. Now, ideally, my output should have increased by this much amount, right? This would have been the increase in my output level. But my output only increases by this much amount, right? Because of the crowding out effect. My output does not increase with the extra amount it should have increased. So the question was asking when would, I think you're talking about shift to paper question. That is why I'm explaining this. So the question was asking when would it be the case that the monetary policy multiplier would be maximum? And the monetary policy multiplier would be maximum if we were not affected by the level of interest rate in the economy, right? So why is output increasing by only this much amount and why is not output increasing by the entire amount? Because the moment you shift this curve, the interest rate comes into picture, interest rate falls. And then because of that, multiple things start taking place. So whenever there will be changes in the interest rate, that is the reason why why you will have crowding out effect or whatever will happen in the economy. So now if I look into the equation of my LM curve, the equation of LM curve is KY minus HI. So if I just bring change throughout, right, this is what is going to happen. So I want that there should, so what is monetary policy multiplier? It asks how Y changes as M by P changes. This is what I want to find out. And if I want the effect of money to be maximum, if I want that there should be maximum monetary policy multiplier effect, what I would need in my economy is that DI should be 0. If interest rate doesn't change in the economy due to some reason, just say for example, what if my IS becomes horizontal? Then interest rate will not change. And if interest rate will not change, then there will be maximum increase in the output. So if due to some reason the interest rate does not change in the economy, then I will be able to see maximum effect of increase in money supply. So if I just plug this 0, then I will get dm by p is equal to k dy. And from here you will get dy by dm by p is equal to 1 by k. That is what it was asking. All that you had to do was to put di as 0. On the other hand, if you actually go through the approach of monetary policy multiplier, you will never be able to get this answer. So if I go from the approach of the other one, अगर मैं IS का निकालूं equation, say y is equal to c plus I plus g plus nx, I will, from here I just solved now. So I just showed you that somewhere I showed you, right, that you will get y is equal to a bar minus bi upon 1 minus c. This is your goods market equilibrium. If you will talk about money market, you will get m by p is equal to ky minus hi, right? And we want to go ahead and we want to find out how my equilibrium is determined. ये equilibrium कहाँ पे आ रहा है? Where my IS and LM are meeting. What is my interest rate and what is the level of the output? So what I will do from here, I will find out I will be KY minus m by p into 1 by h. And I will put my I here. So I will get y is equal to a bar minus b. Instead of I will get 1 by h ky minus m by p upon 1 minus c. You can bring all y terms on one side. So you will get 1 minus cy plus b by h ky is equal to a bar plus b by h into m by p. ठीक है, तो you will get 1 minus c plus b by h into ky is equal to a bar plus b by h m by p. फिर मल्टीप्लायर कैसे निकालते हैं? यू ब्रिंग चेंज थ्रू आउट. तो ये dy, dA, dm by p. And only m by p is changing because I need to find monetary policy multiplier. So this becomes 0. So you will get monetary policy multiplier as this. B by h upon 1 minus c plus b by h into k. But from here, how will you go ahead and tell at what point the monetary policy multiplier is giving maximum effect? You cannot. तो ये वाला आंसर बहुत बच्चों ने last time they made a mistake here. From this is the actual value of monetary policy multiplier. मतलब मेरा output जो यहाँ पे increase हो रहा है ना, when my LM shifts to the right, this increase in output, this is this much. But I cannot through this tell where there will be maximum effect of the monetary policy multiplier on output. उसके लिए बहुत simple formula था that you had to just keep di as 0. अगर यहाँ पे 0 लगते तो you could have simply got that dm by p will be equal to k dy, and then here you would have got the maximum effect. So just remember, if someone asks you to find when the monetary policy multiplier is maximum or when the fiscal policy multiplier is maximum, they are maximum when the interest rate does not change. Then you need to keep di as 0 in that equation and just find the multiplier. Okay.